One day in assembly, one Friday, Mr. Jordan raised a question before the full assembly. Teachers, all the student body, what have you. He said, who closed this door? Some door that, double doors in the auditorium. He said, I wanted this door open. So one of the teachers responded, well, Mr. McLean said he wanted that door closed. And then Mr. Jordan said, I don't care if Mr. Hacklewain said it. I want it open. And that was a I was in 4th grade then. Mrs. Flossie Womack Folks was my teacher. And that was the very first time that a prism of light broke into my soul. I said, oh yeah, it's something different to this thing. There's another side to this thing, you see. Because never had I heard anybody, see, Mr. McLean was Mr. McLean, white superintendent of schools of both counties. And, he was Mr. McLean, next to Jesus. And when he came, and the other whites came to Robert Russell Moulton Elementary School, oh, how we used to have to just sing our hearts out, God bless America, my country 'tis of thee, Star Springer, all that. We just really went to work on that before them. But the turning point came when he said that. I don't care if Mr. Hacklewain. So I knew right then, I said, it's another side to this thing. It told me, you see, this black teacher told me the system can be opposed. It can be protested. Because I didn't know anybody could talk against a white person like that. I thought his rule was the rule, And there were 4 doors to the auditorium, 2 leading, going. But McLean wanted one, Jordan wanted the doors open at all times. And they were open at all times, after he said that. In the black community, we were prepared by setting certain goals, objectives for ourselves. This was done primarily in the home, in the church, and in the school at that particular time because schools had a heavy reinforcement into our characters because they were black schools. Schools were not integrated at that time. Do the best that you can with your life. You are unique. You have a contribution to make. You have something to offer. You have a talent. You have skills. Many, many other things that you do have. Go on out there into the world and get them. Don't stay here in Farmville. There's nothing here for you. It's a retired person's town, a little small place of this nature. But go on and develop yourself. College. If you can't go to college, take up a good skill. Skill trades were heavy then. We've moved away from that, of course. Now, but in the 50s, skill trades were very heavy. Masonry, carpentry, electronics, auto mechanics, and many, many others. So we were encouraged, pardon?
Then, too, your lack of employment, the young people had to go away from home. Every summer,
right.
Most of the young people around here went to Atlantic City to work.
Relative to white America, we were taught that a lot of the values that came into being were set by middle class, let's say white America. In a way, we were to emulate them, because at this point we were at the very threshold of integration. Emulate them, take on many of these as much as possible, middle class values and virtues. There was a kind of inferior stigma placed on black people. But you had to look through it to see exactly where the real truth behind it. That is a stigma of inferiority. You're not exactly where you should be. But you need to do this. You need to do thus and so, in order to be accepted in a white world, into a white culture. You see. They have their values, we have our values. But in a general sense, and the world was teaching this too, in a general sense, our values did not bear, they would tell us in general, as much weight as theirs. So let's try. What does this mean then? What do you say? Go to college, excel in school while you're here and wherever you do go. Appearance, reading, writing, many other things.
And then, too, in this area, we were taught to stay in our place, whatever that meant, stay in your place, because our parents were afraid that if we stepped out of our place, we might get killed, we might get hurt, because they knew that because of racism here in Prince Edward County, anything could happen to you. So they were fearful. it hurt, but we had it brought about some self-pride too, because in school we were taught, we had role models, like I mentioned before. We had role models, and our teachers, instilled self-pride, and we just knew that someday, it wasn't going to be like this all the time. That someday we were going to be somebody. So you just kept that in your minds, that one day we're going to leave Prince Edward. We're not going to be in Farmville the rest of our lives, And for the most part, most of us did.
There were imaginary geographical boundaries in our minds as to how far we could go. There were imaginary psychological boundaries in our mind and emotional boundaries in our minds as to how far we could go, relative to the black-white situation. So we learned to work within the confines, to be creative as much as possible, to make, as black people say a lot of times, make do with what you have. And by this adaptability to this own inner culture, this is what brought forth many of the things, many of the qualities and the strengths. And it meant that we had to live beyond where we were. We were not taught just to watch where you're walking right now, just to look down right where you were in the 50s. But look ahead. There's something out there, Go get it.
Everyone helped raise the kids. Teachers were very highly respected people. And ministers played, and the church played a tremendous role in this. Now, that closeness, I believe, the racism of the times probably had something to do with it, but it was more, I think, of a survival thing, that we've got to train our children to get along in this world. And they could, if they started certain things, if they fight, they're going to have trouble. Now, they may meet physical violence, economic violence, or social violence. And they tried to prepare the children, I believe, to work, to actually live in the white world. I can recall, many saying, being told that, one of the attributes that you should have when you grow up is to be able to get along with white folks. Well, what about white folks getting along with me? Well, you could told easily that, you work for them. You will work for them. You will, they will have a say-so as to how well you make it. And they can even, eliminate you, and will eliminate you if you, get too much out of line. But it was that closeness there, and I think it's something blacks have lost, is that sense of community where the whole community was involved in the rearing of the children. Blacks have been, ever since we've been here, I guess, have been told that you were brought out of Africa, and you were brought to this land. You were uncivilized, and you were made civilized, and look at you today, and you have the white man to thank for that. And you have done nothing to build this country. You have done nothing to help defend it. You've not been involved in science. Now, these are things that I know from childhood. Now, thank God I had teachers who told me otherwise. But anyway, I believe that if our black youngsters had some perception of their history, I think things would be different. I believe they'd be more highly motivated. Now, the father of black history came from this area, from my county. His name was Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And that was his perception back in 1912. And he made a statement that I'll always remember. And that was that in order for you to know where you are going, or where you can go, you first of all got to know where you are. And you can't know where you are until you know where you've been. And once you find out where you've been, know where you are, then you can chart your course to where you can go. But see, we don't, as blacks, we don't, as a people, we don't know where we have been. Consequently, we don't know where we are. And so many of us don't know where we can go, the height, the distance that we can go. that book, The Hidden and the Forgotten, was dedicated to the youth of Buckingham, Fluvanna, and Prince Edward County, and especially to those that I've taught. I taught in those three counties. Most kids, youngsters, have no idea. Most of them have the attitude that if I'm from Prince Edward County, I'm from a place where blacks have never done anything. And since no one else has ever done anything, probably I won't do anything. And that is not the case.